Hi guys, in this video I want to talk to you about the ways the United Nations staff and Secretary General may bribe people or do sketchy things in order to get things done outside the rules. Now, I know of 12 of them after 15 years gravitating around the United Nations. I know these happen. I've known people that have done that. I'm not going to name an organization. All right, let's begin. Guys, the UN is huge. It has 40,000 staff plus. Yes, it's not just the big headquarters in New York, it's tons of small little organizations that handle all kinds of things, like the International Seabed Authority, which handles the bottom of the sea, which only has about 40 staff, and huge organizations like the World Health Organization that we're all familiar with, especially since the virus of unknown origin. All right, so guys, the first thing that they can do to bribe is directly giving money. This is something that can happen, especially for jobs or in order to be able to have elections sometimes in certain countries for secretary generals. Now, this would be the head of mission or something like that. These are things that I've known to happen. Now, how does that work? Well, very easy. You know you're going to get a job for $100,000 a year, say, bribing somebody $10,000 in order to be able to certify that you're going to get that job is not much. That's one way. Number two, giving contracts. Now here, I'm for it and I'm against it. I'm going to tell you why. Yes, for sure, if you know that your uncle has a construction business, you might recommend your neighbor to use your uncle before you tell your neighbor, hey, get 3 quotes and use the best. So that's normal. The UN will do the same thing, but lucrative contracts at the UN sometimes can also be used as bribes. So for example, you have a country that you want their vote for something, you're going to tell that country, the leader of the country or some company in there, look, if you give us the vote, we gonna give you the contract. And that's one way in order to be able at the UN to get votes that things can get done. Now, buying vote from countries. Number three, this is something that can be done in order to be able to get a Secretary General elected, for example. And now, when I'm talking about Secretary General, we're talking about everybody at the head of all those small organizations, not just the head of the UN in New York, like Ban Ki-moon used to be, not to name the present one. Now, if you understand how vote works at the UN, there are two main ones. Major contributors, so for example, the one that gives the most money will get the most votes, or simply a country equal 1 vote. So now you could have Germany that can supply $1 billion per year to an organization and have the same vote that that small little island that contributes nothing actually probably receive money from the UN having the exact same value of a vote as Germany. So now you could have a Secretary General in the UN going, or somebody that wants to become Secretary General, going to those small little islands and say, hey, vote for me and I'm going to help you out or whatever. Sometimes they don't need to be very big. If you have an island where, let's say, the diplomat that actually is attached to that UN organization makes maybe $30,000 per year, and trust me, there's some president of some countries that I know that makes less than that, okay? We're talking very little countries. Chances that this guy will ever fly business class, be put in very expensive hotels, and make $10,000 in 1 month in spending is almost impossible. So if he gets offered this by an organization, trust me, you're gonna buy this guy's vote. That's for sure. And this is number three on how they get vote. From small little island, very easily. And as 1 vote count, then it's easier to buy vote from a small little island than from a huge country like Germany. Employment offers. All right, so basically the national employees of some countries, like for example, again, I'll use Germany because it's a neutral country and it's a big contributors, they will go to the UN and say, okay, I'm going to give you the budget to hire 5 Germans. So these guys are actually, or women, are hired by the UN but paid by Germany. Okay, so this is normal and that works. Small little countries can't do that. And some people, when they want to have their vote, they might just go to this person and say, hey, I'm going to give you a lucrative work, you know, like at the UN, let's say $10,000 a month, like I've mentioned before, more or less the international salary per month for an international staff, if you give me a vote. So if this guy makes very little in his country, that's a huge advantage. And then eventually, he gives them the vote and he gets a job. This is something that happened as well. Now, I'm going to keep with this one with job after retirement. This is also something that works within the United Nations. A lot of UN staff stop working for the UN and basically retire, get their pension, and then return at the UN as a consultant and make a load of money like that. You can promise somebody to continue hiring them after they're done. Now, this one also, yeah, it is not right to do it for, these kinds of purposes, but these guys do have the knowledge, and this is common. Military personnel will quit the army to go work for a contractor of the army afterward. That's not exactly bad because you have somebody with the experience. It's just the way it's promised that is wrong. Now, trip and gifts. A lot of staff at the United Nations have lost their jobs because of these kinds of things, okay? So basically, the rule of the UN say you're gonna get first class or business class if you travel more than 9 hours. A lot of time, people will just reroute, or the way the trip is organized, they'll always get business. Now, what you can do, and this is how the bribe here would work, is that instead of giving the guy a business class ticket, they will give him the money for the business class ticket. The guy can just fly economy or buy the ticket cheaper and just make the money because the UN will always pay the highest fare. So that's basically it. They base this to establish the price. You get the money, ka-ching, that's it. So that's another way that they will do that. Gift could be luxury hotel or other things that is normally awarded. This is not something that's outside the scope, but doing it too much or to people that are normally not receiving these gifts could be enough to be able to buy, whatever, votes or whatever you need from those people. The next two are pretty much the same, but one on the country level and the other one on a personal level. So it could be donations or basically investment in countries to design, build, or award contracts for something. Studies sometimes in Africa might cost as much as $500,000, so they might just decide to hire this company, this firm, or even the government and pay them that amount of money in order to be able to conduct that very expensive study of whether or not people in the country need to have a new school built. Of course, for $500,000, they could have built 3 schools, but hey, that's the way the UN works. Personal contracts, pretty much the same thing as you would have on a national level, but personal. So essentially, somebody has a company or a friend of his or spouse has a company, and in order to be able to buy this person's vote or this person's loyalty, they will give the contract to the spouse of that person. It's something that's common. Now, again, this one I'm having issues to say that it's wrong because on a sense that when you have like close-knit, people, you're always going to have that kind of nepotism, right? Hiring someone or something like that, and you help a colleague, you help a friend, you make a friend. It's not technically ethical because you're supposed, according to the rule of the UN, to have a bidding system, but yeah, that often get just, tossed aside. Education opportunities. Now, this is another way that is a bit of a scam among some UN staff. They will put their cousin, nephew, nieces, or whatever, because the UN will give up to $30,000 to $40,000, depending on the child and if it's a special child or not, up to $40,000 in education grant per year. So that's a very good way to say, hey, I'm going to give you some bonuses, or the staff himself sort of commit somewhat of a fraud by actually adding other people as dependent in order to be able to give them money. That happened reasonably enough in the UN that I know a few of them that have actually done it. Now, this one pisses me to no end, but unfortunately that's the world we live in, and that's it. You're gonna have sometimes in despicable countries, location, places, whatever, have to give maybe 10-15% of the overall aid to the people to, let's say, local gang, local groups, government, or whatever. So essentially, you want to go and give us containers of food while we need to take our cut before you can give the food to our people. This is despicable to no end, but unfortunately, that's the world we live in. And very often, the other thing that's going to happen is a lot of that food or whatever money will not be distributed. And at the end, instead of being brought back and put back into the budget of the UN, it's going to be, well, vanish somehow into the ether, basically, given to somebody or something, or used as bribe or whatever. And that's what it is. Information trading. This is a little less of an issue, because technically everything at the UN should technically be in the public domain, but not all of it. Some organizations, and I'm not saying the International Civil Aviation in Montreal is doing it, ICAO, which handles flights and stuff. Yes, they do have quite a lot of data about flights and about airlines and so on that they sell to the airline companies. So they gather this data and they sell it. Now, this is perfectly fine. It's done normally. However, and they pay for it, and that actually finance the organization, which is great. It prevents the donors from giving money and the company from paying for it, which is great. However, in some other organization, this information can be given for free or in exchange for bribes or other things. That happen as well. And the last one, which is very common in every single government, it's going to be basically networking event and lobbying, right? So you're going to basically go to meetings or talk to people at the UN in order to be able to lobby for them to do something in your country or something for you. This is normal. It happens at every single level of government. It is technically unethical with the UN, but it's done. So that's it. Now, number 13 that I wasn't planning on adding, but it is true and it's against the rule and it's against the accounting rule. And yeah, I'm going to bother you with accounting, but in reality, it could be quite big. And it could cost quite a lot of money. Basically, trip not really taken or trip not taken to the right locations or something like that. So let's say the person, is, I don't know, living in somewhere in the Caribbean, let's say Panama, and declares the United States as the country where they're supposed to take their home leave. So now, let's say every 2 years he takes the home leave to the US, that would be probably a $1,000 flight. But instead of that, he declares, I don't know, Fiji as a destination or China. Now that becomes a $10,000 flight because now that enters the 9 hours more for the business class and so on, and the trip costs way more. Plus add this to 5 family members, we're at $50,000 now. So the guy might just get $50,000. In reality, he shouldn't be getting more than $5,000. So this is something that do happen a lot as well. Also, if you're supposed to have your boarding pass in order to be able to get refunded at the UN, and well, yeah, of course, maybe some people that don't verify, don't check. And I would say that the auditing is not really good either. Sometimes they use local companies. They don't necessarily have to use the big 4 like Ernst & Young or Deloitte. They use small company to do the audits, external audits, and these things get remissed or whatever, or there's no consequences for the action of having done that illegally or against the rule if you don't want to use the word illegal. So that's it. So those are the ways that things can be done at the UN in order to be able to scheme money. And that's it. Sorry, I didn't really have big, huge scandals for you, but this is just as bad and costing millions, if not billions of dollars every single year to country donors and so on. So, but that's the way it is, and that's it. All right, guys, see you in the next video.